E95 of the Impulso podcast by Momentum Works. So on today's episode, we're going to be talking about Meituan, China's leading food delivery player, and its overseas expansion Keeta, under the brand name Keeta, into Hong Kong, as well as recently the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. So this episode is actually a request from a member of our community following a podcast we did earlier in July called Episode 85, Delivery Hero Losing Grip, where we talked about Delivery Hero facing intense competition from most of its global portfolio. So if you guys are interested, that podcast will be linked in the show notes below. I hope you enjoyed today's episode where we talk a little bit more about Keeta becoming the market leader in terms of orders, numbers in Hong Kong, as well as its recent expansion into the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and what's next for Meituan's overseas expansion.
Have you been to Hong Kong?
No. Oh, yes,
You've not been to Hong Kong?
yes. I've been to Hong Kong when I was 11.
Okay, that's like 30 years ago,
No lah, that's like,
10 years ago.
yeah, more than 10 years ago.
More than 10
years ago.
How's that? What was the impression?
I don't remember anything. I only know I went to Disneyland.
Okay,
Yes, I only remember going to Disneyland.
that's the only thing you visited in Hong Kong?
I went like as part of a school trip. So it was like a
Oh,
school
okay.
performance. So we performed at Disneyland.
You perform at
Yeah,
Disneyland?
yeah,
What?
yeah.
Did you have to dress up as a
No.
Mickey Mouse?
So I was in a band. So we
Mm.
performed in Disneyland.
Mm.
So actually, yeah, I think I only went to Disneyland.
So you were completely detached from the real life of Hong Kong when you were there.
Yeah.
Interesting.
When was the last time you went to Hong Kong?
But you were in Hong Kong like last year.
For like an hour in March.
Okay, that was during our
So-
immersion, right?
Yeah, so in March we went to Shenzhen, but my flight was still Hong Kong. So I was in Hong Kong from the train station. I was in a cab from the train station to the airport.
Mm.
Yeah.
I lived in Hong Kong for 2.5 years. I was more than 10 years ago. I think back then was one thing I felt moving from Singapore to Hong Kong is that everything there was very expensive. Food wise, I mean, in Singapore you have the hawker centers where you have the mixed vegetable rice, and you can just go there, pack some rice, and order like some dishes to go along with it, right? So that back then cost like 3, 4, 5 Singapore dollars.
Yeah.
And even now it's still quite cheap.
Yeah.
In Hong Kong, I think back then what we saw, I ate lots of noodles and lots of Thai fried rice, but I didn't see a lot of that kind of concept, right? I mean, you basically order some rice and go along with some
Dishes,
pre-cooked
yeah.
dishes, which was quite popular in Singapore.
Yes, so in Singapore we call it cai fan,
Yeah.
but the English name is like economy rice.
Economy rice.
Economic rice. So essentially it's like a cheap meal that most office workers eat.
Mm.
So it's like rice and then with maybe 2 or 3 dishes. It's either vegetable or meat dishes, so then the price will vary based on that as well. We still eat it a lot now.
So basically the store owner will cook lots of dishes there, right?
Yeah.
And you just choose the rice and pick a
Pick
few.
your dishes, yeah.
So it's getting popular in Hong Kong now.
Yeah, so how do you know that it was becoming popular in Hong Kong? Who told you? Or did you see it when you were in Hong Kong recently?
I didn't. So I try to avoid eating Hong Kong this time around because I didn't see anything exciting. But lots of my friends are living in Hong Kong, and they're saying that the normal sort of office dish, just usually like noodles with fish balls and stuff, and it's becoming very expensive.
Yes.
So I think just last 12 months or so, last 1 or 2 years, there have been lots of new stores emerging, exactly as the economic rice concept. So they would have like lots of dishes pre-cooked, and you just go and pick, and it's usually takeaway. My friends have sent me like multiple videos of them at these kind of stores. Yeah, because I asked them to. I think many of these places I have seen at least do not have a sitting area, so people just go there, order the packet, and leave, and go and back and eat in the office and stuff.
It's like a very office worker lunch thing, right? And I think it makes sense that it's kind of rising in Hong Kong because I think over the past few years, like you said, the last time you were in Hong Kong, you already felt that the prices were more expensive in Singapore. But I think over the past few years, the prices have increased even more, right?
Yes.
So
yes.
for example, we did some research before this to find out what's been happening in the F&B scene in Hong Kong, right? An example given was there's this well-known chain called Cafe de Coral, which is a fast food chain. Have you ate it before?
I loved it. I loved it. There was this curry beef brisket rice, which I used to have a lot, and also they serve like very, very quick breakfast. You go there. I mean, I think now you can order online and stuff. I mean, in the past, it's a place where they have, I don't know, 50, 60 items on the menu, and they go inside and you order, and then they join a queue to pick up. So it runs like a production line.
So it's very fast.
It was very fast.
Quick
It was very fast, and the food was pretty good.
So they have we're looking at the prices of their Hainanese chicken rice. So it used to be about 54 Hong Kong dollars in 2020, and now it's about 60 Hong Kong dollars. So there's about a 10% increase in pricing. And then, of course, generally a plate of char siu rice. I guess char siu rice is kind of like
54.
54
Oh, wow.
Hong Kong
That's
dollars
2020,
in
right?
2020, yeah.
When I was there in 2011, I think the price for that kind of typical dish was probably around 32 to 36.
Wow.
Mm.
So it's almost doubled
In
like
10 years, yeah.
10 years,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And I don't think it's just the local food. So there was even an article, I'll link in the show notes below, that said even McDonald's, I mean, it's also fast food, but like a global brand, announced that they would be raising their prices by 2 to 3% earlier this year. So
I
in
had a
2024.
lot of McDonald's breakfast when I was in Hong Kong.
Kong.
First, you don't have time, and
Oh, okay,
you
that's
rush
true,
to work,
that's
you're
true.
usually late, and McDonald's is fast, and they have a pretty good ground coffee. Their
Oh,
freshly brewed coffee is pretty good, yeah.
from McDonald's.
From McDonald's. In Hong Kong, it's pretty
Interesting.
good.
It's like, you don't hear a lot of people getting good coffee from McDonald's.
No, try it. You'll be surprised. Yeah.
Next time when we go to Hong Kong.
Mm.
So I think it's interesting. That's why I think we've seen sort of the rise of this. It's called Long Song Fan.
Yeah, so fine.
Two dish rice.
Yeah.
So in Cantonese, it's called Long Song Fan. I'm probably not pronouncing it correctly, but the English name is two dish rice. And I think the reason why it's rising in popularity. So we asked one of our colleagues who's in Macau,
Which is not Hong Kong,
which
but
is
close
not
enough.
Hong Kong, but close enough. uh, Side view,
Yeah.
And she said that it's also something she's been eating a lot because she realized that eating out is so expensive
Okay.
that this is like a much cheaper alternative for her. Right. So I think that's
And that's what I think people might be wondering why we're talking about this. This episode is actually from a request from a friend, right?
yes.
Who wants us to talk about why did sort of Meituan's overseas offshoot, Meituan is the Chinese food delivery platform, why did their overseas of Keeta became the number one in Hong Kong within a year in terms of number of orders. And now Keeta is going to Saudi Arabia, and of course, lots of people in the industry across the world are wondering, okay, can they make it in Saudi Arabia? If they can make it work, where would they go next? If I'm incumbent in a particular country, should I be worried? Yeah, so that's the pretext of this. And of course, we started by talking about Hong Kong, right? So we know that I think Meta has been a very, very cautious organization. Even you know that Hong Kong is technically part of China, of course, the system is a bit different. Even for them to prepare the launch of Hong Kong, they did a lot of work because they know that this is a business model where you need, I mean, you best have three parts of the platform, right? You have the riders, you have the restaurants, you have the consumers, and you need lots of preparations for this platform to actually work, to actually be able to take off. And we felt that they are focusing a lot on this kind of cheap one-person meals.
Yeah, so when we were looking at some data from how Keeta has sort of overtaken FoodPanda in Hong Kong, we've seen that Keeta actually has a much higher order number than its competitor FoodPanda, but of course it has a much lower GMV. And the reason for this is because the AOV of most of Keeta's orders are much lower. And I think because when they entered Hong Kong, they used quite a few aggressive promotion campaigns. So just a lot of discounts, maybe free delivery and all. So they seem to really be targeting this low AOV. But it has been helping them grow because now they've overtaken FoodPanda in terms of number of orders that they're actually getting from users.
I think over the years, many analysts have come to us and asking the question that, I mean, not only Meituan, but many of the Chinese tech players, like even Temu, etc. Hey, even Shopee, many of them came to us and said, hey, these guys have very low average order value and the economics will not make sense. Why are they doing that? So the companies with higher average order value would make more sense. And over the years, I mean, initially I was a bit puzzled why people would think this way, right? Because for me, it's natural, right? I mean, of course, when you start in the market, you start from the lower AOV, especially with a platform. This allows you to more quickly build a critical mass of user base. And of course, I mean, for those who have been having a bit of exposure in retail and supermarkets, especially, you will know that the low price is always the largest denominator, right? Even people who are relatively affluent, rich, if they can offer them the same thing at lower price, they will go for it. So from that large denominator, they can attract the maximum amount of customers, and then they can segment the customers. For certain customers, they offer them like so more premium offerings, and gradually for certain customers, they keep the prices low. So this is what Meta has been doing, and many analysts thinking that the AOV is too low because they are just looking at the snapshot. Okay, this is what the company is. But if you look at the whole development journey, right? If I start from zero, where there's already incumbent, I think in Hong Kong it was FoodPanda and Deliveroo, who have already built a market, who already have a lot of consumers, lots of sellers, lots of riders. how do I convince consumers to order from my platform? How do I convince sellers to sell, or restaurants to sell on my platform? And how do I convince riders to work with me? And of course, a simple way they can do is discounts and vouchers. But the question is that where do they spend the discounts and vouchers? I think in Hong Kong, precisely as we just mentioned, right, there are lots of like people who work in busy settings and who find, okay, the eating out has become too expensive. So that's a segment which there's a clear demand. And it's not that these people are poor, right? These people are more cost conscious. And many of them actually office workers who have decent income, but who don't have much time to eat. So they want something fast. They want something which makes economic sense. So at the end of the day, you see that there's this demand, which is clearly there, which you can tap into. And for incumbents, it's usually hard to fight back because they have been selling the stories to investors, to everyone saying that, hey, we are a high AOV company. For them to lower that, it takes lots of gut.
That's true. If you've set your AOV at like a certain level to suddenly go down, then your investors would start questioning you, right? And of course, we know FoodPanda is owned by Delivery Hero.
Yes.
Who probably
So publicly listed company and one of the most important tech companies from Germany, which doesn't have a German operations, by the way. I think it's the same story here as compared to the story between Temu and Amazon. Right? Temu went to the US, e-commerce selling goods at a very cheap price. It's very difficult for Amazon to fight back exactly the same way because precisely as you said, in addition to what you said, you also alienate some of their premium customers from whom they can gain more revenue and more profit.
But we see the same thing kind of happen to companies that start with a low AOV, and then when they start moving up, at the same time, they might alienate their initial customers, right? So it's something that we've seen. So I don't know if it's something we've seen Alibaba do. So they started with Taobao, which is very low AOV, and then after that they focused a little more in Tmall, which is where the brand's higher AOV. Do you think that for them they created a separate platform, so it was a way for them to sort of differentiate, right? You wouldn't really have to alienate, but for food delivery platform, then it would be a little different.
So people think of Taobao and Tmall as two separate platforms. But if you examine the traffic, if you examine where the consumer is coming from, I think almost like 6-7 years after Tmall was established, most people access Tmall through Taobao app. So Taobao is still the common denominator. I mean, people go to Taobao, and if they want cheap stuff, they find, I mean, the sort of the individual sellers on Taobao, and those labeled with the Tmall sign would be the ones which are premium, which are branded, etc. So at the end of the day, I think I had a discussion with somebody very senior at Alibaba before, and they said Tmall will probably not be able to survive on its own without Taobao. That's an interesting assessment coming out of China. And of course, what they have netted potentially over the course of the sort of consumption upgrade in China was the sellers. I mean, many of the sellers, they are selling goods at a low price. I mean, consumers might want to get it, but sellers don't get traffic because brands have the marketing power. Brands have the advertising target budget. So naturally, we gravitate towards the brands. We have seen multiple platforms go through this trajectory, right? You start with masses, then move up the value chain. But we move up the value chain, you alienate
the bottom that you started with.
Yeah, so that gives opportunity for others. That's how Pinduoduo rose. But at the end of the day, does it have to be the case? Let's say the Pinduoduo started with that. Now they are trying to build brands as well. Will they alienate the large base of cost-conscious consumers? We'll have to see. I don't know whether it's inevitable or whether somebody has the ability to break this cycle.
We'll go back to food delivery. Aside the e-commerce site, right?
Yeah.
So we were talking about how Meituan started with low AOV in Hong Kong, right? And now they've sort of I wouldn't say they're the market leader in Hong Kong yet, at least based on GMV, but they are pretty close to FoodPanda. So based on some data, it actually shows that their GMV is about their market share in terms of GMV now is about 36%.
But is that from Measurable AI?
Yes, from Measurable AI.
Great company, our friends, yeah.
Our thoughts for this podcast. And it's been a year since they've actually kind of launched in Hong Kong, and now they've expanded to their second market, I guess third market, if the first we count China as the first market, their third market, which is the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. So this is something we briefly talked about, I think, in episode 85 of our podcast, where I think it's called Delivery Hero Losers Grip. It'll be in the show notes below. We talked a little bit about what makes Saudi Arabia an appealing market for food delivery platforms, right?
Appealing market for food delivery platforms for Meituan in particular, because Meituan has great operational capabilities, has lots of expertise. And the question for them is where they can apply this expertise so that becomes the highest ROI for them. And especially at this stage, it's in the early days of global expansion. They want to prove the case. They don't want to end up in a situation like many other Chinese companies go into many markets at the same time and realize that you don't have enough talent, you don't have enough leadership attention, your organization can't can't support. So you end up being stuck. So I think Meituan is taking a very cautious approach. You mentioned about they are not completely crashing FoodPanda in Hong Kong. I think if they want, they can, right, with their resources.
Yes.
Yeah.
But it's, I guess, how much coupons or discounts that they would want to have to, how much cash they might have to burn to reach that stage before they can use the cash burn and let the momentum.
And even on top of that, I mean, it's from a strategic point of view, what would be their higher priority? So what's the purpose for them to go to Hong Kong? It's not to enter, it's not the Hong Kong market. Because even if they conquer this market, it's like what? I mean, not as big as average tier 2 city in China in terms of GME, right? So, but it's for them to prove a case that I'm able to function in a different market. Now they are going to a bigger challenge, which is, I mean, Hong Kong at the end of the day is still Chinese speaking, right?
There's still a lot of cultural similarities between Hong Kong and Chinese, right? Like food delivery is already.
Yeah, and also it's easy for you to send managers to support.
Yeah.
And I mean, you send a manager from the nearby province, they can speak the same language in Hong Kong. They probably have been to Hong Kong many times. Saudi Arabia is different, right? I mean, the executives of Meituan, for them, is probably a foreign market. And they need to hire lots of people in the market, which will test their management skills, their organizational skills. I think they take it very seriously. They also take it very cautiously.
But I think what we know about the Meituan leadership team is that they are very cautious. So they've probably, they see the potential and they think it's worth an investment. But I think it's interesting that you mentioned the challenges Chinese companies face when they go overseas, because it's something that you talk a lot about, not just on the podcast, but in your book as well, right? That obviously when you're expanding your for Chinese companies, when they go global, it's often not the product itself, but whether or not you have the leadership and the right people and organization that can help you expand. And in terms for Meituan, I feel it's a little different as well, just because the nature of their business is so operationally heavy. So for example, we've seen like Alibaba has expanded pretty decently globally, ByteDance with TikTok, and then of course Temu as well. Temu is now in like 82 countries, right?
82 as of yesterday, yes.
82 countries as of yesterday. So for them, it's a little easier because a lot of it is maybe on the logistics side or what. But for Meituan, every country that you expand into, you have to find your fleet of riders. You have to fly in a fleet of restaurants that want to sell on your platform.
Yeah, and you have to convince consumers to
so I think that makes it a lot harder, right? Because then there's a lot more parties to take into consideration. Operationally, you need a lot more bandwidth for your leadership team and your organization as well.
So I think that is why they are, I mean, I'm not sure whether cautious is the right word for that, but they certainly put lots of attention in each single market that they expand into. And now the head of, which is Meituan's overseas arm, Tony
Qiu.
Yeah, Qiu Guangyu. He reports directly to founder Wang Xing since I think earlier this year or last year. So basically, that removes the constraint of resources, because previously when you have the head of overseas reporting to someone who's not the founder, you will have a problem of when head of overseas say, hey, I need this kind of resources, I need this kind of product configuration, I need this. And sometimes it's difficult to be evaluated using the same metrics, right? Because you know that even for Saudi Arabia, I mean, country of 36 million people, which the order volume you are going to generate is probably smaller than a district in Beijing. Yeah, you can't evaluate this markets using the exact same metrics as you would do in China. So removing that organizational hurdle, having a founder or co-founder directly looking at this, I think makes lots of sense.
And I think he's someone who has had experience expanding an operationally heavy business overseas, right? So he used to lead the DiDi expansion into Latin America.
Yeah, that's quite a fit, right? I mean, because DiDi went into Latin America, entered Mexico directly, and acquired a company in Brazil called 99. So I think DiDi's entry in Latin America as a ride-hailing platform has been quite successful. And they managed to build a local team, build their operations. And many people might not know that DiDi is probably one of the largest fintech companies in those countries, because, I mean, they need to pay their drivers. They need to collect payment from their riders. So they have the fintech capabilities. Tony was leading that operations for a while. That probably gives him a lot of experience in functioning in a far away market from the homeland and try to secure the resources, try to organize the operations.
So that's why he's the one leading. I mean, I think he's a good person to be leading the expansion into.
At least I think he would have the, I mean, unlike a new manager who has only been operating in China, to be sent to a new market, he would have encountered a lot of challenges himself in his previous life, and he would have learned a lot. And I think probably he respects the market more compared to someone who has never left China. Also compared to someone who is hired locally in those markets, he would know how to navigate the headquarters,
Chinese side of the business, right? It's just that they've decided to enter Kingdom of Saudi Arabia because last there were a couple of rumors about whether or not Meituan would acquire FoodPanda, right? So when we talk about FoodPanda, we are talking about FoodPanda in Southeast Asia, who we know has been trying to divest its Southeast Asian business for some time. They did sell their Taiwan business to Uber.
They reached agreement to sell their Taiwan business, which, by the way, is the best performing business across the FoodPanda ecosystem, to Uber. Whether this deal would be approved by regulators in Taiwan is a question mark. So even if it does, it will probably take like 1 or 2 years. At the moment, when we look at the operation in Taiwan, it looks like a BAU. FoodPanda is still managing it. But the good thing about Taiwan is that the Meituan will probably never go there into Taiwan. Yes, so
that's a good market to be in. Yeah. How about Korea? Because I think in the episode 85, when we were talking about Delivery Hero, we talked a little bit about Baemin as well, right? And we know that the food delivery scene in Korea is not bad, but Korea is a kind of different market, right? They're kind of like Japan in a sense that if you were to enter that market, there's a lot of localization that you have to do.
I think localization is one thing. So if the market is attractive enough, I mean, people are willing to put the effort to figure out localization. I think the case for Korea is that you tend to have local players who are very, very competitive. So Delivery Hero bought Ua Brothers, which operates Baemin, which was, maybe still is, I'm not sure about the latest numbers, the largest food delivery player in Korea, and it is profitable. So, but recent months, Baemin has been under lots of pressure from Coupang Eats, basically the food delivery arm of e-commerce platform Coupang. So I'm not sure whether it makes sense for Chinese players to enter Korea, because Meituan probably know that you will be facing very strong competitors, and the strong competitors who are fighting against each other, and you can see how fierce the battle is. And also culturally, I think the Chinese executives will understand that Korea being, East Asian, they are very 卷. They're very, very competitive. Unless there's a good M&A opportunities that come up, well, otherwise, I don't think it's going to be their focus. Many people are asking the question, right? I mean, if Meituan managed to establish a foothold in Saudi Arabia, if they manage to become the market number one, which I think the only obstacle for them is how to figure out, how to manage a bunch of non-Chinese executives and ground workforce. If they manage to do that, and what would be next? I would think that you look at a few criteria, right? You look at the market with good supply and demand dynamics. So good supply of restaurants, dense population, lots of demand for food delivery,
decent high spending power.
Decent spending power, which rules most of Southeast Asia out. Then you have a good sort of labor force, and where the cost is manageable. And also another criterion is that you have a local incumbent who's very comfortable. Comfortable in a sense, not that they're not doing a good job,
but they're not as or maybe not used to having to compete in such high intensity.
Let me just give a simple example. I mean, for them to lower their AOV, would they feel comfortable? If they feel extremely uncomfortable, so they will have the organizational sort of resistance to fight directly against Meituan. That will give opportunities for Meituan to do it. Yeah, I would think that the next markets could be other parts of Middle East. I know Delivery Hero also owns Talabat, right?
Yes, so Talabat is in a couple of countries in the Middle East.
Yes, and I have lots of friends living in Dubai, and they use Talabat regularly. And I do think that Dubai is a city which is built very suitable for food delivery, high dense residential and office towers, lots of people, and good spending power, and very reasonable labor cost for riders, and good supply of restaurants. I would think that, with Talabat dominating. So I think that would be an attractive market for Meituan. So I guess that's probably the reason why Delivery Hero is putting Talabat for IPO, because they will need more financial resources, and having that IPO in UAE, in Dubai itself, would probably align on local interests with them as well.
So recently we were looking at the sort of share price of Meituan, right? So we were looking at the share price of Meituan compared to that of Nvidia. And you shared that your friends at Meituan have told you that they've been quite happy this quarter.
Not this quarter, just
recently.
just a week during the China's National Day holidays because there was stimulus.
Yeah.
And of course that sent the Meituan's price almost double, right?
Yeah.
Within a week. And this week it's I mean, everyone's a bit nervous about whether this is going to last. We filmed this podcast on the 9th of October, a day before China's top decision-making bodies did a press conference where people widely anticipated they would dish out a lot more fiscal stimulus. They didn't. And now there's a speculation that the regulators or the authorities are afraid of a stock market overheating. But certainly, I mean, Meituan's price has recovered a lot, almost tripled from about a year and a half ago when it reached its lowest point with all the crackdowns on tech. And I can see that many of the executives I know are in a better mood. And what typically happens with tech companies, if the stock price is rising, people are more motivated. That's the golden rule.
That's a good time to enter a new market when everyone is motivated to.
Yeah, but they need to hire like executives for local markets. And that's a challenge that they need to figure out.
Yeah. So I think that's all for this episode of the Impulso podcast. We hope that you guys enjoyed today's episode. And if you did, do like and subscribe to our YouTube channel, Apple Podcasts, or your preferred podcast platform to stay up to date on the latest happenings and trends in tech, new retail, and the broader digital economy.
And if you managed to visit Hong Kong recently, and just let us, just go and try one of the sort of economic rice stores and tell us what you think.
Yes.
Bye-bye.